Yeah, we're modifying the ribbon today. So here's the plan. Go ahead and download. We may get to the ribbon chart wizard. That's something I wrote that may be helpful to you, but you'll definitely want this charts ribbon workbook. And because here's what we're going to do is we're going to build. We've got several things on here, right? We have we need to make a chart. So that's one of the things we have to do. We have to clear off the existing data and be able to delete charts. And so we're going to add a ribbon that will allow us to kind of do those three things from the ribbon. So that's where we're headed today. So I'm going to kind of give you a little background on the ribbon. So the ribbon interface was introduced into Excel in 2007. So prior to that, there was a kind of a menu interface, and modifying the menu was a breeze. Just like putting something into the menu was easy. You could do it with VBA. Modifying the ribbon is not so easy. So that's the bad news. This is not easy to do. The good news is, because it's not easy to do, almost no one knows how to do it. And so when you learn how to do it, you will be like more than mortal in some spheres. Now, let me kind of help you understand there's kind of two ways when we talk about modifying the ribbons. The first one, don't do this. The first one, file options, customize ribbon. If I make changes here, what I'm doing is I am changing the ribbon configuration on this instance of Excel. So, I can even add in, actually, I've never modified the ribbon this way. But you can make there we go, macros. Right? So you can actually invoke macros from right here in your configuration here. That's not what we're going to do. What we're going to do is we are going to modify a workbook so that when the workbook is active, then the Excel ribbon will show with the tools that you want here. Now, for my Mac users, if we modify the ribbon, it'll work on a Mac, but the tools that we're going to use today to modify the ribbon are Microsoft only tools, sad to say. You can do this on a Mac. In fact, you can do this by hand. Let's just take a look at that first. So what we're about to do, the tool we're going to use is just to streamline something, which is a really kind of an onerous process. And in 2007, when this was released, and it was like, yeah, you can modify the ribbon, and then you read the instructions from Microsoft on how to modify the ribbon. You went, you're kidding me. Oh my gosh, you're kidding me. Let me show you what they told us to do. In fact, I'm going to start with, I better get an assignment, something that's got a ribbon on it. I don't think I have any of those on my machine. So pause for a moment while I go get one from my educator. Is this our course? Yes, it is. Manage assessments. Fibonacci sequence, highlight a row. Highlight a row has a button on it. And so let's preview it. Okay. Now, the first thing that's going to be really amazing to you here is that what the Excel file format really is it is a zip archive of a bunch of XML files. So XML is kind of like HTML. It's called extensible markup language instead of hypertext markup language, but it's kind of similar. They're text files. When I say zip archive, raise your hand if you'd like a little explanation about what a zip archive is, or if you're good with that. Okay. It's a zip file. So here's the thing, is that it used to be like when we're trying to back things up, we're going back to the 1970s and earlier. When we want to back things up, we might have hundreds or thousands of files that we have to back up. And someone said, what, this would be really great if we could just make these into an archive. And in fact, it was initially for getting things off the computer onto backup tape. And so one of the common compression, or one of the common archive formats is called tar, .tar. You'll see it much more in the Unix world than in the Windows world. And it stands for tape archive is what it is. And all it did was it said, take all these files and squish them together into a single file. So we have to move one file instead of worrying about moving thousands of files. Just last week, I had to move like 14,000 files from my computer up to Google Drive. And for some reason, my Google Drive sync app wasn't working, so I had to upload it through the web interface. Of the 14,688 files, 14,686 of them went. 2 of them just didn't go. So like even today, like moving around large numbers of files, some weird things will happen and a couple of them won't move. And so imagine that problem was even worse like in the 1970s. So let's make 1 file out of it. And so that was like the beginning. And then they said, you know what, there's a lot of overlap in these files. Maybe we can find a way to say, oh, you know what, this block of text is the same in all these files. Instead of actually putting it in all the files in this archive, we'll take that block of text out and we'll have some variable that refers to that. And we'll say over here in a table, this block of text goes in all these places. So that's how it can compress the data, is it says stuff that happens in multiple places, we're going to keep track of it and only store it once. And then we can, you know, take something that's really large and make it small. And it turns out that XML has a lot of duplication, and so it compresses really well. And so, so what a zip file is, it's an archive and it's compressed. And so it has this data compression algorithm to make the file smaller and takes multiple files and puts it into a single file. That's what a zip archive is. So what I'm going to do, and what I just told you, which seems amazing, is that is really what an Excel file is. If it's a .xlsm or an .xlsx, that's the format that you have. So first thing we have to do, if you want, you can either watch this and be amazed, or you can do this along with me. You won't need to do what I'm about to do. But if you want to, make sure you can see your file extensions. So choose View, and then click on File Extensions. And I'm going to rename this file. And instead of .xlsm, I'm literally just changing the file name to .zip. Making this change doesn't change anything about the file, but it's going to tell the operating system, hey, this is an archive. So when I double click on it, treat it like an archive instead of like an Excel file. It's going to say, hey, are you really sure you want to do that? That's an unusual thing to do. Yeah, I really am sure. Now, if this was not the proper format, just changing that wouldn't let me look into it. It would just be like, I don't know how to read this. It's not really a zip file, but this one is. So I'm going to double click it. Oh, wait, have I extracted it? Oh, yeah. Double click it. And I haven't extracted it, but I've just kind of gone into the zip file. And here it is. I mean, I can come here and say, oh, let me come and look at my Excel folder. And in this, I've got worksheets. There's one called Worksheet 1, an XML file. Let me see if I can open this. I'm going to extract this so I have these files natively. So let me come back up here and extract all. Extracting. Okay, so I'm actually in the extracted set of files. You come to Excel, Worksheets, Sheet 1, and open this with VS Code. VS Code is just a text editor. It's one that I happen to be familiar with. It's one of the few things that was actually created at Microsoft, like not acquired by Microsoft, that is really quite excellent. So this is like the format of the data for that workbook. And we should be able to see some values in here. Yeah, so there's a value right there, 2011. I forget what this data is, but this is row E240, D230. Maybe that stands for reference. And you can see the name. Literally, I could come in here and edit this file this way, save it, rezip it up, and that would have changed the Excel file. That's, you know, I don't know why you would ever need to do that. Like if you're Excel, you're on a machine that doesn't have Excel, and you somehow have to edit some numbers in this workbook, you could do that. Okay, but the point is that's the structure of this file. Themes. Now, you'll notice that this one has a folder called custom UI. Now, if this was a regular Excel file, it wouldn't have this folder in. So this is like the instructions in 2007, how to modify the ribbon. Unzip, change the name of your thing, unzip it, make a folder called custom UI. By the way, not only spelling, but case is gonna matter. And then put these folders in there, and if you need images here, bring your images, put those in here. And let's go ahead and open this one. And this then is the modification of that ribbon. So this file right here is what we have to be able to, we've got to get this file into the archive so that when Excel loads, it says, hey, is there a custom, a user interface customization on this? It sees the folder, goes, oh yeah, there is. and it finds this, and okay, so here it is. We're going to modify the ribbon. In the set of tabs, we're going to make a new tab called, it'll say assignment on it. There'll be a group in it called email, and there'll be a button on it that says highlight row. So that's a really bad name for this, but it's just because I was copying and pasting. The ID is not important, but the label is what's your homework. So, and then that, when the user clicks on that, it's going to run a procedure in VBA called run button. That's what this interface says. So fortunately, we're going to download and install a tool today that will make this process pretty easy. We don't actually have to, it'll do all the extracting and the unzipping and putting the file, kind of the modification. We'll still have to work with a single file that looks like this to configure it. But we don't have to worry about all the zipping and creating folders. Okay, so that's the background that we're going to work with today. How many of you are feeling a little bit nervous about this right now? Now, it's okay to feel nervous. This is, as I said, this is not easy to do. This is why we don't cover this before the add drop deadline in this class, right? Okay, so, and again, we don't have to have this extracted. But the point is, if I'm working on a Mac and I really need to make a ribbon modification, yeah, I can go through it this way. Okay. So now, so we don't have to do that all by hand. I'm going to come back to the blog, and down here at the bottom, this very last, no, this middle one called the Office Ribbon X Editor. So that's going to take me over to GitHub. GitHub is just a place to share code. And so someone has written this program, this guy, Fernando Andrew, has made a program to be able to streamline this for us. And it's going to do a great job for us. Now, the one I recommend you getting is the self-contained. This probably the installer. I can't use the installer on this machine because I don't have administrative privileges. Fernando has thought about that for us, and he said, look, here's just the binaries, kind of self-contained. If you can get these onto your computer, you can run it without ever installing it, which is what I've already done. But go ahead, and the one I recommend, let's see, self-contained .NET installer, no binaries, Office, which one do I want? This one's huge. Actually, probably the fastest way forward is to download this one, even though it's a little bit larger, 61 megabytes. Download this one, and then it'll be a zip archive, get it extracted, and then we'll work from there. So let's go ahead and pause the recording while we get that installed. Okay, so one question that came up while the recording was off was, what if I was to download the installer, even like this installer, if I download that installer and run it, if the program comes up, you're in good shape. If it doesn't, it might say, oh, you have to install the Microsoft.NET 6 library, which is kind of another process to go through. Okay, so now if I just go ahead and double click, I've now extracted the download, and I found this Office Ribbon Editor, the Ribbon X Editor. I'm going to double click that, and that should open up an editor that looks like this. So what we're about to do is we are about to open our Excel file, the one we want to put the ribbon in. In fact, I better go ahead and close it. I'm going to save this with a different name, just because I need to have it named differently to upload. Save as, I'll put it in my downloads. I'm just going to call it Charts Ribbon Fall 21. And I'm going to close it. I really do not want that Excel workbook to be open in Excel and in the Office Ribbon X Editor at the same time. It's possible to open them at the same time, in which case they will kind of write over the top of each other when they're saved. So just don't do it. Close it out of one, open it in the other. So now I'm going to choose open, and I'm going to open that file here. So open, it's in my downloads, charts. Did that open up with this? We have a ribbon. I didn't expect there to be. Interesting. That means when I built this assignment, I built it off of I built it off of one that already had a workbook, that already had a custom modification on it. It's really interesting. Let's just kind of look at this ribbon modification. This is a really annoying ribbon modification. Can you understand? Can you just kind of look at that and see if you can guess what that does? It hides the help tab. It turns off the help tab on this work. Why would you do that? What's that? Oh yeah, because there's really no help. You know, you're just wasting time if you try to go get help off the help tab. It turns out there was a professor who had said, you know what, when my students are doing an exam, I would really like to not have that help tab available for them. Professor Allen, is there anything you can do for that? I said, well, yeah, you could do this. And then somehow that ended up being something that got copied somewhere else. So let's do this. I'm wondering if I can delete this. Just right click and say remove. So this is what, when you have a brand new created workbook, this is what it will look like. It'll come in with just the name of your workbook here, and that's it. Okay. We're going to pause here for a moment. I'm going to explore another one of these links that we have up here. So here's the Ron de Bruin site on ribbon modification. 2007, every developer, kind of Excel developer in the world, was so frustrated with the change to the ribbon because it was like totally not documented. This guy, Ron de Bruin, somewhere in the Netherlands, like went through and figured out how to work with the ribbon and wrote a site on it, and he has kept it up since. And again, I don't know why he does this. I would expect to see some kind of advertising here or something, but this is just a great site that really talks about what you can do with the ribbon. Lots of great examples. It's where I found out about this tool, the Ribbon X editor, kind of takes you through this. So this is a resource that we really won't be using today, but I just wanted to point this one out. I used to come here to be able to get like this example, because that's what we're going to need, an example. But now the ribbon actually has an example, this tool has an example very similar to that built in. Okay, so are we ready to go ahead and move on? Or does anyone have questions getting to this point? So I no longer have that second level underneath just the name of my workbook. Okay, so I'm going to come to the insert menu. I'm going to choose insert, and I'm just going to insert I have two choices here. I have an Office 2007 custom UI part or 2010. So in 2007 is when they introduced this ribbon interface, and then they made some substantial changes by 2010. They haven't really changed the model since then. And so there's no reason to do it in Office 2007, unless you have someone who's working with Office 2007. If you got someone with Office 2007, then they can see ribbon modifications that are built as 2007 ribbon modifications, but they can't see any other. If we build it for 2007, it will work for all newer stuff, but it's probably time for us to just work with 2010 plus. That was 11 years ago. Do you know how old 11 years is in computer years? It's like 300 years old. It's a long time. So let's go ahead and insert an Office 2010 plus custom UI. So now we've got that block right here. But that's the one we deleted moments ago. Now there's no code in it here. And so, but fortunately, we can insert that as well. I'm going to choose Insert, Sample XML, and I'll do Excel, a custom tab. By the way, this same tab will let you do modifications, or this same tool will let you do modifications in Word and PowerPoint as well. So if you want to put a ribbon modification in Word or PowerPoint, this tool will do it as well. So Excel, a custom tab. It's going to replace, yes, that's fine. Okay. All right, so this is telling us we're making a user interface customization. This is XML. How many of you have worked with HTML before? How many of you are looking at these tags going, this is the first time I've ever seen anything that looks like this at all? Okay, so this is kind of a structured thing. So this then begins a tag. This is an opening tag, custom UI. it ends down here where it says /custom UI. So everything in between those two tags, these angle bracket tags, is part of this custom UI tag. Inside that, it says, oh, we're going to modify the ribbon. What that means is that Microsoft is anticipating that there's going to be some kind of customization that's not ribbon customization. There may be others. I don't know what it is. But we're going to say we're modifying things inside the ribbon. So we've got this tag here, ribbon. Everything inside this pair of tags says we're working on the ribbon. I don't know what you can do on the ribbon that's not inside of a tab, but oh yeah, there's like the, I have Excel open, but there's like the quick access tool at the very, very top. You can modify those here as well, but we're not doing that. We're working inside the tab structure. So tab to /tabs. Now we've got we're making a tab link here. So everything we've done so far here is we've just identified where we're going to be working. And now we are building a new tab. The ID needs to be unique among all of our IDs. So custom tab is a fine thing here. The label is what's going to show on this. Now, this is going to be the words that are on the tab that we want the user to click on. Now, this is going to be, for modifying our charts. I mean, for like doing the charting of this census data. So I think I'm just going to call this census chart, census charts. So we're going to have a tab called census charts. And it's saying, this is, where do you want to insert it after? So which tab do you want to put it after? By saying this is going to go after tab home, it's going to be the second tab, third one, because there's the file tab, and then there's the home, there's the file tab, and the home tab, and then we're going to go right after them. I don't like to put custom tabs there because they're really hard to find. Wow, has anyone chatted me to say my mic is on? Yeah, it probably has. Is your mic on? Drew, my mic is now on. Thank you. Oh, that was kind of a lot to go without actually hearing what I was talking about. Hopefully you could hear something. Are there any other mics in this room?
We could hear you. We could hear you just fine. It just sounded a little bit quieter than usual. So that's why I asked.
Outstanding. Thank you so much. Okay. So now, I don't want to put it after tab home. It'll be impossible to find. I'm just going to get rid of that. Select it and delete. And it will go at the very end of it'll just be the last tab. Okay. Let's doing some interesting things here. This is saying I want to bring in the clipboard tab. So there's actually, I'm sorry, the clipboard group. When you look at Excel, the tabs, and it shows different groups on the tab, you can like bring in existing ones onto this new tab. So this example is saying bring in the clipboard group, bring in the font group. I think that's fine to leave it as an example. So I'll leave these two here. But this is where we're making a custom group. We're putting our own group on this tab. I'm gonna come back to this one in a minute, and I'm gonna go ahead and delete these other ones. This is kind of like too much of these, bringing on these extra tabs. It'll just be kind of visually too much for us to work with, more than I want to work with. So I'm going to just delete those. So I'll leave these two existing groups in. And by the way, when we see ID equals, that's me making an ID. When I see ID MSO, which stands for identifier of a Microsoft object, this is me saying, go refer to something and bring it in. So anytime ID MSO, I'm trying to find something to identify something that's kind of already pre-built. So this group, this group. This group ID is custom group. This is one we're making. So we've got a custom tab, and on it we've got a custom group. That's a fine name. And so here, I think I'm just going to call this charts. This will be the name of the group. Now, it turns out, and I do not know why this is, but when they made the interface for Mac, they don't actually display the group names on the ribbon on the Mac. So that's just, it'll still work okay, it just won't display this part. Okay, we've got 3 buttons. They're called custom ID 1, custom button 1, 2, and 3. That looks great. Label, Okay, so the first one, why don't we have this one called Bill's chart? We'll have one called clear data. And we'll have one called delete all charts, or just remove charts. It turns out you've got two sizes of the button to show up here on this custom button. See if you can guess what they are. Large is one of them. What's the other? You might think it would be small. It's large and normal. But we're just going to leave it with large. Now, what you'll see here is that these three have actions here that are just the names of individual sub-procedures. And that's possible that you can just say, I've got a sub-procedure that this button runs, a different sub-procedure that this button runs, and so forth. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have these all run the same procedure, and then we'll actually decide what to do based on the information that gets passed in. And so instead of this, I'm going to call this procedure run, let's see, I'll call it ribbon click. And I'm going to have all three of them be the same. In fact, now just because I'd like these IDs to be a little bit better than this, I'm going to call this, well, let's go ahead and leave them. We'll leave them as button 1, 2, and 3, custom button 1, 2, and 3. It'll make our code a little less readable, but I think let's try to make as few modifications as possible. Okay, the last thing that we're going to do here then is we're going to change the images that show. Now, actually finding the images and finding the names of the images is not especially straightforward. There's a couple of sites out there that do okay with it, but I never liked the tools very much in terms of how easy it was to be able to find the image I was looking for. So I'm going to come back to our blog, and we're going to explore another link here. So the MS Office image names. So if you click on that, it should bring you to something that looks like this. So this is just, I found somewhere where someone had actually made these images available as separate files. And I just uploaded them to like a Google Photos album. So you are looking at one of my Google Photos albums. And so the nice thing about this is that it's kind of easy to scroll through all of the different built-in images. So any of the ones that you see here are images that you're just kind of can very easily put onto any tab. There are hundreds, if not thousands of them. But you have to find the name of the file. So what is our first one called? Is our first one making a chart? So there should be something that kind of looks like a chart here. Back to the top and start again. About the middle. There's a pie chart. Did I go too far? No. Ah, here we go. This one looks pretty good. So I'm going to click on this. And if you're not showing the info over here, click on the little round circle up right-hand corner. And I'll just show you the information of this file, but I have named this file. You can find the name of this file here. Here it is, chartplotarea.png. That is the identifier that we need. So in all cases, the names of these files are the Microsoft object identifiers that we need. So I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to put that as the image MSO. So the next one is clear data.
You don't need the .png.
Not only do I not need the .png, I cannot have the .png. The .png is the name of the file here, but I named the file with the Microsoft identifier plus .png to indicate the kind of image that it is. So our next one is for clearing data. And the truth is, it doesn't have to be the same one that I chose. You'd probably find one better than the huge red X, but I'm going to use the huge red X. Change to decline invitation. That's the name of that image. So click on the little info in the circle, the eye in the circle, upper right-hand corner. And then you may have to zoom in. Unfortunately, to see the image as well, you have to zoom way out. And then to see this, you have to zoom in. And then my other one is remove all charts. I see anything that looks like a chart being removed.
Conditional formatting.
Conditional formatting, clear menu. If I felt like I could type that in, I might just do it. I'm going to choose this one just because I found it. Actually, go ahead, help me type it. What's it? What is it? Conditional formatting? Capitalization is going to matter here. Conditional formatting, clear menu. Okay, so these are all going to run a procedure called ribbon click. Oh, in fact, so it turns out that this editor is saying, listen, if you're going to be calling these, not only is it going to call a sub-procedure called ribbon click, but it's going to pass to it an object that'll let you know which button was actually clicked on. So we've got to configure that procedure to be able to receive the information that's going to get passed to it when it gets called. So I'm going to come to this button up top that says generate callbacks. And it's giving me the VBA I need to be able to have my ribbon click procedure. So I'm going to copy that. I'm just going to put it in Notepad, just so I can make sure I don't lose it. I'm going to want to paste this into my VBA code. So see how it's going to pass an iRibbon control object called control that I can kind of look at and see what properties it has and know something about what was clicked. This will become really important if you ever do something advanced where you're saying, I want to not just put a button in the ribbon, but like a drop down that you can choose from, or some there's kind of other things you can do in the ribbon. Okay, last thing I'm going to do before I save it is I'm going to validate. So I click on the little validate and it says my UML or my XML is well formed. That's good. Because if I have like I'm missing a bracket or a quote or something, it won't validate and the ribbon just won't show up. Question?
So you said the alternative to copying that code and generate callbacks, just put the subs in the equals upon action.
So the question is, could I just put different names of sub-procedures in here and then I wouldn't have to do generate callbacks? And the answer is, I probably still want to do generate callbacks because whatever the sub-procedures I put in here, they're going to be configured like this, where it's going to be passing an object to me. So I can't just call a bare sub-procedure because it is going to pass something in. So I need this part here as well. Yeah, the difference is going to be, it'll either just run it, but what this one's going to do is it's going to look and see which button was clicked on and then decide what procedure in my code to run. All right, I'm going to go ahead and save this file. And now I'm going to close it. So file close. Is there a close? Close current document. Now that I've closed it there, I'm going to reopen it in Excel. And I should see that ribbon modification now. Here's my census charts ribbon. It's got the two existing groups that we asked it to bring on. And it's got these now 3 new ones. If I click on any one of these, it should, let's see, enable content. It should tell me no can do because there's no ribbon click macro yet. So it turns out that ribbon modification tool cannot actually put VBA into the file. Microsoft is very careful about that. Their format is open, but the VBA block is a block that is encrypted and unable to be edited except by Excel. And so that's why they gave it to us as text so that we could paste it in, which is what we're going to do now. So I'm going to open up my editing environment. I'm not sure what I have open here, but let me close them. So I've got a couple of modules here. I'm going to go ahead and insert a new module just for my ribbon stuff. And I'm going to name this one Mod Ribbon X. Why it's called Ribbon X, I don't know, but that's what the ribbon environment is called, Ribbon X. And now I'm going to paste in that callback that I copied. If you didn't copy it, it's easy to type. Oops. You don't need to comment. It's just called sub ribbon click. Control as iRibbon control. Now, at this point, all I'm going to do is run a different sub procedure in my code, depending on which button is clicked. So let's do this. At this point, let me just do a debug.print of control.id. And that should show me, remember when you set the ID, when you set that up in the XML file, this now should show me, just print out the ID that I've just clicked on. I'll open up my immediate window. And so now if I come and choose those buttons, it should print the names of those controls out for me. So the ID of that is custom button 1, 2, and 3. Okay, but now we can see it's actually executing that procedure. And because it gives me the ID of the button that was clicked on, I can use that to figure out which procedure I actually want to run. So it turns out that this approach is really, it's better than just putting the name of the sub procedure in the ribbon, because now I've got one procedure that handles everything from my ribbon. I can kind of look at it and I can see what is actually being invoked from it. Otherwise, it's kind of tough to kind of look at that ribbon and go, I wonder what that's running. Right now, it runs one thing. Okay, so build chart. Let's go see if we can find what the build chart procedure is. Let me come look in module 1. So show, it's not in show data. Yeah, so we got one called make chart. We've got one called clear data. Looks like clear data deletes the charts. We've got delete charts, which deletes the charts. I think I want these as separate ones. And so I think I'm going to remove delete charts from clear data. So I've got just the 3, clear data, make chart, and delete charts. I may just go ahead and paste the names of these so I can see them as we're going. Okay, so I'm coming back to mod ribbon X, and I'm just, instead of printing this now, let me just go ahead and do a select statement. Select case and select case, and then my first one is make chart. Case. What was my second one? I don't remember. Clear data. And then delete charts. Oh, sorry, my mistake. This is the ID. This is what we want to do after we have found the one. Tools, options, auto syntax check off. Okay, So custom button 1, when the ID is custom button 1, we want to make chart. When the ID is custom button 2, we want to clear data. And when it's button 3, we want to delete charts. That should do just what I'm after. Questions here? All right. So I should be, let's go ahead and do remove charts. Removes the charts, clear data, clears the data. I better add in a couple of more to compare. It'd be pretty boring charts if we didn't have anything to compare. Now build chart. So when we finally get there, it's not that much. The difficult part is kind of understanding how the whole XML thing works and what you have to do to actually get in there. Questions? Yeah.
So when you like open up the ribbon, why is there all of the other stuff like from the home ribbon?
Let's go back and take a look at it. So I'm going to go ahead and save this and close it. So the question is, why is there other stuff in the ribbon? And let's go take a look. So I am saving it.
It's like on our homework side instead of other stuff.
Oh, yeah. Now I see what you're saying. Let's go take a look at it. Yeah, I'll show you. In fact, we can take it off now that you've seen it. And I'll open this one up again here. It's right here. This is saying bring in an existing group. Bring in an existing group. I'm going to.
Those two groups are what make up all that.
Yeah, let's just take a look at it. So we've got the clipboard group. I'll close it here. Actually, I'll just open up a new file because they'll be on this one as well. Here's the clipboard group, and here's the font group. And so what we're saying here is just bring those groups in and put them on this tab. So one thing you could do here is you could say, oh, you know what? I don't want to have to go tab to tab to tab. There's like 4 groups I use. They're on 3 different tabs. I can make my own tab and put those groups that I use right on this tab. And it's like, this is my tab. You know, what I want for working with this workbook. But now that we've kind of seen that work, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of those here. Save and close. Open up my ribbon one again. And now when we look at that census chart, it's only the one that we want on it.
So like how you can make macros load your personal workbooks and they don't want any spreadsheet.
Yeah, so the question is about macros in the personal workbooks. They're available anytime this is open. Yep.
I see we can't do that with like the ribbon.
So put it so that, say that again, so that it's so that
like you make a custom ribbon and it's there any spreadsheet.
oh, yes, you can. Yeah, so the question is, could we make, and that's the next thing I'm going to cover. Can we make a ribbon that is just whatever I put on there is always there? And the answer is yes. That's actually called an add-in. So you remember that the way that we do the grading here is with the Atlas add-in. I'm going to show you how to make an add-in. You ready? Question.
How did you get back into the RibbonX editor with that code that we?
Okay, so the question is, how did I get back to the RibbonX editor to actually see the code for modifying the ribbon? And the answer is I opened this workbook file with that tool. Make sure I'm going to close it here first. I'm going to come back to the RibbonX editor. And it's the last one I opened. So if I choose open, it's going to be, whoops. If I choose file, it's going to be my recent file. So it's right here. So it remembers the last one I had open. But this is that.
Got on to found Office RibbonX editor in your unzipped spot.
And launched it, yeah. I never closed it before. I closed the file, but didn't close the program, which is how I got there so fast. Other questions? Okay. So now, what an add-in is, there's a couple of different kinds of add-ins. There's what's called a COM add-in. So it's component object model add-in. it's written in some other language and then kind of compiled into something that Excel can read. But we can write add-ins using VBA. And all an add-in is, in that sense, is a workbook that I've said, just open up this workbook when I open Excel. And by the way, make the ribbon always available, because normally your ribbon modification is only visible when that workbook is, even though it's open, but it's when that workbook is active. Let me close this and open this again. So you'll see I've got my census chart ribbon is active there. Interesting. That actually used to go away when it lost focus, which was weird, but now it's there. Apparently they didn't like that and they changed it. Never mind. I was going to show you something that is no longer true. So, okay. So now what I'd like to do is I'd like to say, listen, I want that census. That's really kind of that's a bad example. This one's really depends on this data being here for it to be able to work. So if I have code that could run on any page, then let's do that. I'm trying to think that any of this code won't be meaningful as an add-in. Solver's an add-in. It's not made with it's not just built on top of a workbook. That's a COM add-in, I'm pretty sure. Okay, so let's do this. Let's just add ourselves one more feature in this workbook that we can invoke that will kind of make sense as an add-in. So it will be pretty boring, but let's just go ahead and do it. So I'm going to come back to my code. And let me come to ribbon X. And let's prepare for a custom button 4. And we'll go put it into the ribbon here in a minute. And this will be really bad, but we're just going to show the current time in the message box. Message box now. So that's what our add-in is going to do. It's going to show the current time. So I've just added a new case here. I'll save that and close it. We'll go build a button for that. Maybe I'll find a button that seems to make sense. That'll be something that looks like a clock. Don't want to spend too much time looking. I don't know what that is, but that's the closest clock I got. CD audio start time. Woohoo. All right, I'm going to go ahead and open up my Office ribbon editor again. I'm making custom button 4. We could put it in its own group. Do you want to see it in its own group? Let's go ahead and put it in its own group. Okay, so now I've got a custom group here and another custom group here. These can't be both called the same thing anymore. So I'll call this custom group 2. And instead of charts, I'll call this time. It's going to be custom button 4. It's going to be show time. On action will still be ribbon click. And my image is going to be CD audio start time. So now this ribbon modification is going to say we want to have 2 groups. One will be called time. And this one will have a button that says show time and has a little clock with a play button on it. Let me go ahead and close this and see how it works. Save. Close. Open up my workbook again. And now we should have show time, and it shows the time. Well, the only reason I'm doing this is so that when we make this into an add-in, there's something that will actually work. And you'll be able to see it work. Okay, ready to make the add-in? It's, don't blink because you'll miss it. Here's how we do it. File, save as. I'm going to browse. We put it somewhere I can find it. I'm going to put it in downloads. But it's not going to be an XLSM. It's going to be an XLAM, an Excel add-in. It's always hard for me to find. There it is, Excel add-in, XLAM. Now, it's defaulting this to like the location of the add-ins, which will make it really easy to find. So I think I'm going to go ahead and just put it there. Charts ribbon F21, that's a great name for it. Now you'll notice the file I still have open here is what? It's still my XLSM. So it's like saying you're not going to be editing that XLAM. It's like a publishing format. So now I'm going to close this workbook so that I don't have that ribbon modification showing. And I'm going to choose File, Options, Add-ins, Manage Add-ins, down here, Manage Excel Add-ins, Charts ribbon F21. If I hadn't saved in the default location, I could browse and go find that file. But now, that will bring that ribbon modification in, and it will be here as long as that add-in is active. And if I open it, there's my ribbon, and the show time invokes that. That workbook is actually there, and it's active. I could refer to the sheets that are on it. I just can't show the sheets. So you do not show a sheet from the workbook add-in, but all the code is available.
How's that different from personal XLSB or whatever it is?
So how is this different than an XLSB? The personal well, XLSB is a binary format. You're talking about personal.xlsb, which is the personal macro workbook. So the difference is that once you put a macro in your personal macro workbook, it creates that personal.xlsb file, and it just automatically opens that every time. This one, I can actually install it, uninstall it. I can manage it, turn it on, turn it off as I want. But yeah, it's very similar, except there's a lot of work involved to get here. Yeah, and if you are thinking, oh, I'd like to do it this way, I would recommend you take all that stuff from your personal macro workbook, put it into another workbook, and make it into an add-in. Yeah, in fact, I just had a student email me, former student email, he took the class a long time ago, like 2008, like the second year I was teaching it here. And he was just kind of bragging a little bit, which I'd love to have you brag. There are a few things I enjoy more than getting a message from a former student bragging about some great thing they've done with the stuff that I've kind of got them started on in this class. Apparently, he went to work for one of the major accounting firms and went into audit and said, you know what, all this stuff that I'm doing, I want to automate most of this stuff. So he started building an add-in kind of for personal use. Pretty soon it was used by his buddies there in the Denver office. Pretty soon it was used by everyone in the Denver office. And he emailed me to kind of show, because there had been an article written on their main publication that they use internally for their employees, where that thing had now been kind of formalized and rolled out kind of company-wide, so 100,000 employees or so using the add-in that he wrote. So yeah, being able to package your stuff up as an add-in, and conveniently giving it to other people to use is kind of a nice skill to have. And easy, right? We did it kind of from zero to making an add-in in less than an hour. But a really important part about the add-in is having the ribbon there so that people have access to it. Questions? All right, well, uncharacteristically, I think I'm going to call it good there with 5 minutes to spare. Thank you for coming. Class dismissed.